Just over 1 week ago, Charlie Kirk was martyred in cold blood. He was in the act of debating with people, sharing the gospel, talking with people, discussing with people, handing out hats, doing what he did all the time. He went to tons of campuses every semester, and his life was taken, and I think the world will never be the same because of it. His impact when he was on this earth was great, but his impact now that he is gone is far, far greater. We saw it just this past weekend on Sunday. I saw tons and tons of accounts of people saying they would have never considered going to church. They would have never bought a Bible or even read a Bible until they saw what happened to Charlie Kirk, and they saw the videos of him boldly sharing the gospel, boldly explaining his views and debating his views with people who disagreed with him. And I want to talk about these recent assassination attempts, not just the Charlie Kirk assassination, but also the different assassinations and assassination attempts that have been so common in recent months and years, and just kind of discuss, like, where are we as a country? Where are we going? How do we correct course? And how do we continue this movement that Charlie Kirk started, this turning point that so many people have brought up? So, the Charlie Kirk assassination was just 1 week ago. But in 2025, there were also multiple other assassinations and an assassination attempt, and there might be more that I haven't realized or I haven't caught in my research. We had the assassinations of multiple Minnesota lawmakers and their spouses. We had the assassination attempt on Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. And in 2024, we had the United Healthcare CEO assassinated. Donald Trump had 2 assassination attempts. Brett Kavanaugh had an assassination attempt. And all of these assassinations and assassination attempts had the same 3 things in common, in my opinion. They were all done out of hate. They were all done because of political or ideological disagreements. And they were all done by people who were mentally unwell. It takes a seriously sick, mentally sick person to commit these acts of violence and hatred against these people, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. I don't care. And when I look at all these assassinations and assassination attempts, I think Charlie Kirk's is the biggest of them all, like even bigger than the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, because of what Charlie Kirk did, what he said, how he lived. Those things speak volumes, and we've seen it, because he is the antithesis of the political and ideological hatred that all of these people allowed to consume them. Their political and ideological beliefs drove them to hate those that disagreed with them to the point that they attempted and in some cases succeeded in silencing their enemies. That's what all of these assassination attempts have in common. Charlie Kirk was the opposite of that. Instead of silencing those he disagreed with, he gave them the microphone. He asked them what their beliefs were, what their opinions were. He asked them to defend it. And he gave his own opinions and beliefs. And he was respectful. He was kind. He cared for the people that he spoke to. He shared the gospel with them. He was a good man. But when we look at all these assassination attempts, especially the one and assassinations, and especially Charlie Kirk's assassination, and I would consider it a martyr. If you don't, there's videos talking about that. We're not going to go into that discussion on this video. But if we really want to move on, if we really want to continue Charlie Kirk's legacy, we have to understand the root of the issue. I already talked about why the person and the people did all these assassination attempts and assassinations, but we really need to go deep and understand the root of the issue. And I've discovered that I feel like there's 2 main things that are the root of it, and then there's a few tertiary things that also contribute to it that kind of exacerbate it. The first one is that politics are inherently theological. Every person's political views is fueled by their theological beliefs. And honestly, in my opinion, I think everybody is theological in some nature, even atheists. Like an atheist, their theology is that they are God. They believe that they are God. They consider themselves above everyone else. Every religion has some form of theology. And so these people, when their theology is that they are God, they idolize themselves. they idolize their beliefs and their twisted worldview. And so when somebody goes against that worldview, that belief system that they have, because they see themselves as the most important, the most, powerful, the most, they think they are the star of the show. When somebody goes against them, they see that as almost like blasphemy against them, and they seek to destroy those that disagree with them. And number 2 is that ideology is a reflection of the heart. And ideology is just a person's worldview, and that's kind of similar to my previous point. But these people, these assassins, they operate on an oppressor-oppressed mindset, and that comes from critical theory. And that mindset says that violence against those who oppress you is justified. They think that's okay, and we've seen that in all the people. I remember just a few minutes after seeing the news that Charlie Kirk was shot, I searched Charlie Kirk on X, and I flipped it to the latest tweets to see if there was any latest information, to see like what was going on, what was happening. And I scrolled, and it was just person after person cheering, celebrating that Charlie Kirk had just been shot, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I had to turn my phone off. I had to switch to something else because I was just so disgusted with it. And that's those people that with the oppressor-oppressed mindset. They believed that they were oppressed by people like Charlie Kirk, who disagreed with their opinions. And so they believed that it is justified to act out in violence against him, to murder him, to kill him in cold blood. And that's in complete contrast to the biblical worldview that says all people have worth and are valued because we are all creations. We are all God's creation. And that gives us value and worth and purpose. But when you have that worldview of oppressor-oppressed, you start rationalizing violence like I was talking about. Like, for example, we've probably all heard this term like microaggressions. That's what it kind of starts out with. It's like, oh, you're dehumanizing me. You're committing a microaggression, whatever that even means. And that escalates into radicalization from listening to people that tell them that they're being attacked or oppressed. The outpouring of that radicalization is violence. We saw it with the George Floyd riots. They thought they saw themselves as oppressed, and so they considered it justified to act out in violence and to loot and riot in the streets. With so many of these assassinations, we saw that same thing, that oppressor-oppressed mindset that led them to violence. Another example of this is the trans movement, which was something that Charlie Kirk was boldly outspoken about. He was very outspoken about his disagreements with the trans ideology, and it is an ideology, and that's one of the things that most likely, we don't know for sure, but it most likely fueled, the assassins' opinions and hatred on Charlie Kirk. Because the trans ideology says that if I say that I am something that I am not, you have to affirm that, or else it's violence against me. That's what the trans ideology says. And that's such a dangerous thought process, a dangerous path to go down, because that allows that person to justify violence, to justify, for example, rioting or looting or anything because they believe that they are oppressed because of the quote-unquote violence that they've encountered and, from these people that speak out against them. Even though, like, people like Charlie Kirk who would use the proper pronoun rather than the pronoun that the person wanted to use, or would use the person's given name rather than the one that they wanted to use after they transitioned, they saw that as violence. They saw that as justification for murder of Charlie Kirk. And that's the root of it. It's their ideology that has poisoned their brain. And it's not just the trans ideology. There's plenty of other things that people disagreed with him on. People disagreed with him on, his faith, his beliefs, his biblical values. People had disagreed with him on all kinds of other things. And but it's this. I really do believe that it's mainly the trans ideology that he goes against that caused that aggression against him, and aggression against those who speak out against the trans ideology. That is such a grave threat to our country, I think, right now, and we need to acknowledge that, and we need to root that out of our society. And some of the other things that I think contribute to this this hatred and this violence are things like political climate. I've seen tons of videos of people on the left, whether it's Nancy Pelosi or Biden or Kamala Harris or, any, you could probably pick out by random any Democrat in the House, Senate, presidency. You could probably pick out any one of them. And I'm sure almost every single one of them has said something like, Donald Trump is a threat to our country. Donald Trump is a fascist. This person or that person is a fascist. We saw the assassin who killed Charlie Kirk wrote, "Catch this fascist," or something like that on one of the bullet shells. He thought Charlie Kirk was a fascist? What fascist gives the microphone to the people he disagrees with? How in your right mind can you believe that somebody like Charlie Kirk or Donald Trump is a fascist? It doesn't make any sense. If anything, the fascist is a person that is silencing the people he disagrees with. It's completely twisted understanding of reality. And that's another thing that is exacerbating these issues. And then I've also got here in my notes, our culture overemphasizes achievement rather than meaning and purpose. And this is something that Charlie Kirk flipped on his head. Charlie Kirk emphasized purpose over achievement. And that's such a major issue because lack of purpose is a serious issue that so many people struggle with. And that's something that Charlie Kirk really fought hard to fight against. He tried to show people their true purpose. Check out this video.
Men, let's be honest. We got to raise our game in this culture. We're constantly around one. They say, oh, just go place another bet on this running back to run 100 yards. Just go to the cannabis dispensary and medicate yourself. That's all a bunch of BS. Go look to your grandfather's generation that stormed Normandy Beach, that built this nation, that started big businesses, that went on adventure. If the most important thing for you is just feeling good, you're going to end up miserable. But if the most important thing is doing good, you will end up purposeful. Purpose will give you happiness. You see, we live in a country where they think that happiness is pleasure. We know that purpose is above all of this. Serving God, understanding why we are here, that we are made in His image, that there is a struggle of good versus evil. By the way, you're involved in that struggle every single day on the college campuses. Every day you get to fight for what is good and what is true and beautiful. So next time when you're on a college campus, and if you want to be a man, this is what you do. If you want to stay a boy, go and do what your other friends do. But men say, you know what? No, I'm actually not going to go hook up with a bunch of girls. I'm going to save myself for marriage. Actually, I'm not going to go do that. But if you want to go be a boy, go do that. It takes no skill and no talent and no self-restraint whatsoever just to follow your flesh. An animal can do that. A dog can do that. You know what mature people do? Mature people say no to what feels good, and they pursue what is good. And far too often on college campuses, we have these grown boys, and I'm talking to a lot of you in this audience, and it's time for you guys to up your game. It's time for you guys to stop doing just what feels good all the time. Oh, yeah, we're just going to go get, blackout drunk till 2 a.m. and hook up with some stranger. No. If you want to stay in the lower standard, a miserable cycle of debt and suffering and depression, lack of community, go do that. Instead, on a Saturday night, say, you know what? I'm going to hang out with some friends that are not going to drink, are not going to, engage with this stuff. And then maybe on Sunday morning, I'm going to go to church or I'm going to go to mass. And then I'm going to go work out. And then I'm going to study. Who will be happier? You know I'm right.
Charlie Kirk was speaking the truth there. Like, that is such a powerful message to the young generation that needs to hear that needs to hear that reminder of their true purpose. Another thing is social media. Social media, I think, has contributed a lot to this. We saw with the assassin who killed Charlie Kirk and a few other assassins, that they watched videos that were glorifying violence. They watched, I don't remember what the Reddit community was called, but it was people were just posting videos of like extremely gruesome, violent things, and that gets stuck in your head, and it doesn't go out unless you really seriously seek the Lord in that. Those are things that are ingrained in your mind for a very long time. And social media is something that contributes to that. It also contributes to like depression, loneliness. And all of these things that I've just listed are little small contributing factors to this climate that we're in of violence and aggression and assassinations and All of those things are things we need to deal with as a society. We need to set our phones down. Charlie Kirk is a big proponent of going 1 day a week, turn off your cell phone, just be with the people around you, be with your family, with your friends. Charlie Kirk was a big proponent of that, and I think we could all learn something from that. And those are all things we need to work as a society to move out of, to grow from, to find purpose, things like that. But how do we do that? What are some actionable steps that will help us move on and to fix those things that I've just listed? The first thing is these people that are celebrating Charlie Kirk's assassination. They are and they should be ostracized from society. Many of them I've seen already have been fired from their jobs, and they should be fired. That's within the rights of the companies to fire them, because their company's reputation is damaged because of those employees that they have are speaking out on something that is they're celebrating somebody's assassination. Somebody with a wife and kids who will never hug their husband or father again. And those people should be ostracized from society, absolutely. A lot of those people celebrating that were teachers and professors who teach our kids and our college students. Those people should be not employed. So that's one thing that we can do, and we already have started that. We've seen that happen, and that's a good thing. We also have to remember a few things from the Bible. I think this is important. Psalm 5 and 6. The boastful shall not stand before your eyes. You hate all evildoers. You destroy those who speak lies. The Lord abhors the bloodthirsty and deceitful man. You see a lot of people saying, oh, the Lord hates the sin, not the sinner. This verse begs to differ. The Lord abhors the bloodthirsty and deceitful man. God hates those who seek to kill others in cold blood. We see also in Psalm 11:5, the Lord tests the righteous, but his soul hates the wicked and the one who loves violence. Now those are attributes of God. Those are things that God does. God hates those who love violence, and he hates those who are bloodthirsty and deceitful. But what does God tell us to do? In Matthew 5 we see that, verse 44. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. We should have a desire for these people who celebrate these atrocities. We should have a desire for them to come to know Jesus. And I know that can be hard, because what they do is so vile and disgusting. But we must pray for them. As it says, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Those who wish, the people that wanted Charlie Kirk dead are the same people that want you and me dead. They would celebrate if we died right now. But we should pray for them. Romans 12 verse 20. If your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him something to drink. For by so doing you will heap burning coals on his head. And that's something that Charlie did so well, because those people that wanted to hurt him, that hated him, that wanted to kill him, he never said a bad thing about him. He gave them the mic. He asked them what their opinion was, what they wanted to talk about. And he respected them. He talked with them, discussed with them, and they killed him for it. But some people out there are going to come to Jesus because of what happened to Charlie Kirk. We've already seen it. And that's because of the prayer, and that's because of the work that Charlie did while he was on this earth, and the impact that his death had on us all. And that's powerful. We should be angry, but not out of hate of the wrongdoer, but out of love for the victims and to protect the vulnerable. And that's why I think public executions are justified. Because if we want these violent acts to stop, we have to be strong against them. There has to be swift justice. These people should be shared. We should share the gospel with them. These murderers, these assassins, give them a Bible in 24 hours, give them a meal, a priest to talk to, or a pastor, and then they should be brought to justice. This person that killed Charlie Kirk is most likely going to get the death penalty And I think that's completely justified. The Bible says that the government has the authority to do that. And I think people need to realize that there are consequences, not just on this earth, but in heaven. There are consequences for their actions. But most of all, I think the way we move on from this is that we have to continue being bold and sharing the gospel wherever we go. Because that's what Charlie would have wanted. That's what he did when he was here. That's what he would have wanted. That's what he wants now. He was so bold in talking about his faith. You don't have to, sell everything and become, a missionary across the world to be able to share the gospel and to be able to make disciples, to be able to fulfill the great commission that Jesus called us all to. All you have to do is to be bold in your faith. You don't need to know the answers. I know Charlie Kirk didn't have all the answers. He often reached out to people who knew more and were wiser than him in biblical things and asked them for their help, for their opinions, for their thoughts. And we can do the same thing. Reach out to people that are older and wiser and know more than you to understand what the Bible means. Go study it for yourself as well. I think there are so many things that Charlie Kirk stood for that are so important for us to remember right now and to continue on. Charlie allowed his Christian worldview to form his political beliefs. Therefore, through his political debates, because his opinions and beliefs were founded on the truth of the Bible, he could not explain or argue his points without at the same time proclaiming Christ as King. And I pray that for the same thing for all of us. I pray that all of us would be so entrenched in the gospel and in the understanding and in the wisdom of the Word of God that it would permeate throughout us in all areas of our life, whether it's at work, school, anything that we do. I pray that everything that we do would be driven by the gospel. Everything we say, everything we do, driven by the gospel. Because that's what Charlie Kirk did. Even though he was at these events mainly to talk about politics, his political beliefs were founded on his Christian worldview. And the same thing should be true for us in our workplace. The things we do, the work that we do. Our work should be a way to worship God through the things that we do, the ways that we work, being kind to people, sharing the gospel with people, all of these things. That's how we move on from this. That's how we make change in our broken world, sharing the gospel. And so with that being said, I want to leave you guys with one last video. Take a look at this.
Please explain to everyone out here what Jesus stood for, and especially the qualities of love, how to love your neighbor even if they don't agree with you.
So what is your name again?
Talise.
Talise, that's a beautiful question. I'm glad you came up to ask it. So John 8, if I'm drawing from memory correctly, best embodies both Christ's mercy and love, but also his commitment to truth. And sometimes in the modern gospel, we overemphasize the grace and we underemphasize the truth.
Yeah.
And so we are far too willing to say, hey, Jesus loves everybody, but we don't get to the second part of the conversation that says Jesus doesn't want you to live in sin. So this is, in John 8, it's best embodied, right? Almost every Christian in this audience will be able to tell you the first part of this, which is a bunch of Sadducees and Pharisees who are standing around with rocks, and they're about to stone the prostitute woman. And Jesus comes up and says, let the first among you without sin cast the first stone. And everyone starts dropping the rocks. But what comes next shows that Christ is not just grace-focused, he's simultaneously truth-focused. He goes up to the woman who had a career in selling herself for sex and said, sin no more. Now, imagine today how much trouble you would get in if you would go up to somebody and say, stop sinning. Oh, you're being too judgmental. No, you're actually being Christ-like. So Jesus stood. He was 100% grace and truth. And that tension is very hard in a modern world because we want to overemphasize grace when in reality Christ loves us too much to have us continue to live in sin. He wants us to try to elevate our actions to glorify God in all that we do.
Such a beautiful message and reminder to us all, and just a great understanding of the gospel of truth and grace that Jesus walked in and that we should walk in as well. So I hope this video inspired you to be more Christ-like, to be bold in your faith. And because of this and through this, we can do the Great Commission. We can make disciples of all nations, baptizing in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, because that's what truly matters. Thanks for watching.